What's up, though? This is Trent, aka TradeMark here. And if you don't follow the gaming industry news, yesterday Microsoft updated their policies about the Xbox One. Because I'm sure you guys know the Xbox was receiving a lot of hate and bad publicity, and there was a large part of the gaming community that spoke up against Microsoft and against their policies, and they actually listened. So you will no longer be required to have an internet connection in order to play games offline on the Xbox One. And you can also freely trade and resell games at your discretion, just like you can with the Xbox 360 games. So I'm not going to talk very much more about the changes, although I will post the link to the announcement in the description. But what I want to talk about is what an amazing thing it is that Microsoft even listened in the first place. Right? Granted, their policies were idiotic to begin with. I don't know how they thought they could place those restrictions on the console and think that people would just be okay with it, but that's besides the point. The cool thing is that the gaming community as a whole rose up together to say that they wouldn't stand for this, and because of our actions and everyone who participated in voicing their opinion, Microsoft changed a huge part of their plan for that console. And I think there should be more movements like this. More specifically, I think the Call of Duty community needs to band together and create a movement similar to this that makes a clear and united stance about what we find acceptable and what is not acceptable within the Call of Duty franchise. And when it comes to Call of Duty, I recognize that it is a lot harder to get the entire community to agree on what should and shouldn't be included in the game, right? When it comes to game balance and features, there will always be varying opinions about what should and shouldn't be changed. There's people that love quickscoping and want it to be easy to do and prevalent in the game, while there's another group of people who despise quickscoping and sniper rifles in general, and they just want them completely removed from the game altogether. And there are those who love shotguns and want them buffed, and there are those who hate shotguns and want the one-shot, one-kill weapons removed from the game. There's people who like powerful score streaks and they want to get hundreds of kills with their score streaks. And there's other people who want to tone down the score streaks and bring the shooter back to a more classic gun-on-gun first-person shooter. But while there are hundreds of things that the community will never agree upon because it's too large and has too many varying opinions, I do believe that there are some central concerns about Call of Duty that can almost universally be agreed upon. First and foremost, no one likes a laggy, poorly networked game, right? Call of Duty should have dedicated servers on all platforms. This should have been implemented a long time ago. And I've mentioned this in the past, but out of the billions of dollars that they make off of their customers every year, dedicated servers, yes, they'll cost money, but it is a very small fraction compared to how much they make off of this game every year. And there should also be a server browser, or at least a more extensive matchmaking system that allows you to get the gaming experience that you want to have. The matchmaking is so archaic. There's been server browsers on PC for over a decade. There's been server browsers on console games. It's just that certain developers refuse to diversify the way that they do matchmaking. Imagine a system where you were in control of what you wanted to play. Let's say that you could select the checkboxes for all the game types that you wanted to play. You could select a checkbox if you wanted only to play with solo players, or if you wanted to play with parties and anyone. What if you could choose between ranked and ranked skill-based matchmaking and unranked random-based matchmaking? What if you could choose between the types of game types and maps and everything? If you could just select these things and then press search and it just found the game with the best connection that matches your criteria, that would be amazing. And yeah, there has to be certain restrictions on like ranked play. You can't just be able to, set a whole bunch of criteria for what you want. But the point is, there should be a more customizable experience when it comes to finding lobbies that you will have a good time within. You shouldn't have to be forced to jump from lobby to lobby just to finally find a lobby that you enjoy, that has the type of people that you want to play with. And they should also be more open and honest about what networking aspects they can and cannot control. For example, I hear a lot of uninformed YouTubers talk about things like lag compensation and how bad it is in Call of Duty, when in fact, lag compensation is a very good thing. Because of latency, because it takes time for information from your game to be sent from your console to the host console, and then from that host console to the other players in the game, if there was no lag compensation, you would shoot at an enemy, and by the time the information got to the server, notifying it where you're shooting, you'd actually be shooting where the enemy player used to be, not where they're currently at. And so it would literally, without lag comp, it would force you to have to predict and shoot at where the enemy is moving to rather than where they are at. And so, these latency issues will always be a part of online multiplayer play. Well, until there's a huge improvement to the overall infrastructure of the internet. But providing dedicated servers, at least for now, can create a more consistent connection for people, for everyone game to game. It also solves a lot of issues with like dashboarding and whatnot, and it takes a load off of the host console because it doesn't have to process that information. All of the things that are processed about the game are processed in the server. And so those type of things, there are just some basic things that don't relate to the developers, but there's also tweaks that the developers can make in regards to how the networking packets are handled. Like current gen consoles receive 20 on Call of Duty, they receive 20 updates per second from the host, and then they send 30 updates per second to the host. So you're receiving 20 updates, sending 30 updates. And when you consider that the game is trying to render 60 new frames every second, that's the target, that's what they always market, even though it's not, it's not a static 60, it actually fluctuates. But even though they're trying to hit 60 frames per second on the game, you realize that your console is not sending and receiving enough updates to create a seamless viewing experience on your screen. And this isn't taking into consideration things like packet loss and interpolation, which are topics which will take me a lot longer to explain than what I want to get into in this video. But my point is, there are some things that a developer can adjust and some things in relation to the networking code, and there's other things that they cannot adjust or that they won't adjust because due to maybe restrictions on the current code or networking or engine in the game, or even the hardware. And hopefully that will improve as the next gen consoles come out. But on to the next point. Secondly, no one enjoys an unbalanced game. And well, it's subjective as to what a balanced game really is in a multiplayer setting. I think most people can agree on some basic concepts about balance. Like, for a first-person shooter to be truly balanced, you will see a wide variety of weapons and class setups being used game to game because they all have their strong and weak points. Now, I'm not saying like guns being used just to get challenges done or get camels or whatever. You would see weapons, you would not see certain weapons being used exclusively for competitive play or for normal play after the strongest weapons have been discovered. There would be diversity. For example, in Modern Warfare 2, the UMP-45 submachine gun was unbalanced. The UMP was a 3-shot kill SMG at any range, even with the silencer. So there was no penalty for putting a silencer on it. There was no penalty at any range. It was always a 3-shot kill. And there's also things like one-man army, which were their unique ideas for a perk that were poorly thought out and implemented. Like, it allowed people to have unlimited explosives. You combine that with danger close, which gives you your explosives more damage, and then you have grenade launchers and claymores and grenades, and it's just like you have one of the most overpowered class setups in Call of Duty history. There were weapons like the FAMAS in Black Ops 1, which is an assault rifle that performed better than an SMG or an LMG in nearly every single situation. And that's why it was seen in pretty much every competitive game that ever was in Black Ops 1. There were perks like Stopping Power and Juggernaut that were just wildly rampant in nearly every single class setup in Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, and World at War. And while it is debatable if these perks were actually overpowered, when you compare them to the other perks within the same tier, they're a lot stronger. And that's what I'm getting at, is that if you have certain perks or certain weapons that just outclass everything else within their tier, within the roles that they play, that's all that people are going to use. And so you need to balance that by giving all of those things strong points and weak points. And the how strong and how weak they are needs to be balanced. And things like in several Call of Duty games, a secondary pistol or a shotgun has been more powerful and more effective to use than than any primary weapon. Things like the Akimbo 1887s, pre-patched FNG9s, pre-patched Cat 40s. Those are all dual-wield weapons, and I don't know why dual-wield's even still in the game for secondary weapons, but they're all haunting reminders of just how unbalanced Call of Duty can be when you don't think the strong and weak points out correctly for some of these weapons. And that's why they all had to be nerfed. And last of all, no one likes a game that they don't enjoy, right? Like, that's what games are for. They're for your enjoyment. And no one's going to play a game that they don't have fun playing. And so, again, while this is highly debatable as to what an enjoyable game is, there are some globally accepted concepts of enjoyment and of dislike that can be applied to Call of Duty. For example, no one likes a bullshit death. Like, it's one thing to get outplayed in a one-on-one gunfight where your opponent drop shots you or jumps around a corner and shoots you. It's an entirely different experience, and it's very infuriating to get killed one off of your next kill streak by someone who just dropped into dead man's hand. Because for some reason, the developers thought it would be a good idea to reward players with free kills for playing poorly. Like, that doesn't even make sense. And no one likes to be put into a game that's already in progress only to find out that you're losing by some insurmountable amount, and you know that's going to count as a loss. Regardless of you leaving, I mean, it gave you a loss, basically. And the enemy team is probably calling in a massive amount of their kill streaks. So you get right into the game and you're just getting taken out, and you get a loss for it. And no one likes to be killed the second that they spawn. No one. Some people like to kill people right when they spawn, by manipulating spawn points or using uncounterable score streaks or overpowered score streaks, things like VSATs and EMPs. And I know I'm guilty of it, but it's like no one likes that. No one likes to feel like they have no counter to what the enemy team is doing. If they have a VSAT and EMP up in the air, what can you do? Literally, the enemy team is blocking you from using all of your vision streaks, and they have perfect vision of you and where you're at. It's just like it's just not fun. And then there's also things that people can typically universally agree upon that are fun. I think most people like score streaks. That's one of the things that's been unique to the Call of Duty series that's really put it ahead of the other FPS games. Everyone likes going on a killing spree, or everyone likes to win a close game, or some people like to win games by huge margin. It's just like there are generally accepted things that are just fun about first-person shooters and fun about Call of Duty, and there's generally accepted things that are not fun. So to summarize my thoughts, this Xbox One announcement has shown that even companies as large as Microsoft and Activision, they will completely change their vision for one of their products if a large enough portion of their customers unite together and they clearly tell the company what it is that they want and what they don't want. And while, again, I'm under no delusion that it is literally impossible to get the entire Call of Duty community to 100% agree on anything, right? Like, you're just not going to be able to get everyone to agree on anything. But I do believe that there are some changes that should be implemented that the majority of our community does believe in and does want. And I do believe that unless we make a united front on some of these issues, our pleas will fall on deaf ears just like they have in the past. Because as long as the Call of Duty franchise continues to make record-breaking sales each year, as long as COD is the front-runner game within the first-person shooter market, they will not listen to individual members of this community. And I guess I should put a disclaimer on that. I'm sure there are people with millions of subscribers or part of professional organizations that have the developers on speed dial and they're buddy with Vaughn, and maybe they have the ability to influence the game on a much more personal level. But for most of us, unless we stand together collectively as a collective voice large enough that they actually hear us, our suggestions just fall on deaf ears. And so what I want you to do is, if you are a fan of the Call of Duty franchise, I want you to do me a favor. In the comment section of this video, I want you to post a comment and tell me what, in your opinion, is the most important change or changes that need to be implemented in future Call of Duty games in order for you to truly love this game. And if you already love the game, tell me what would make it better. Because you can always improve upon the games. And what I will try and do is organize those comments and those thoughts into a video and try and take the suggestions that are most prevalent, at least within my circle, at least within my viewers. I will try and take the things that are most highly regarded as the changes that should be made, and I'll try and make a good, well thought out, well presented video that I can then try and pass on to the developers, that I can hopefully get a few of them to watch or listen to and see some of our suggestions and hopefully implement them into the future Call of Duty games. And that's really what my objective is behind this video. So if you would be so kind as to do that, I would be very appreciative of it. And again, Malo Alpito, thank you very much for watching, and I'm out of here.
55. Holy
The thing about
shit.
this